Over the last 20 years, the UFC has transitioned from a niche sporting league to one of the most popular in the world. The top mixed martial arts league is now mainstream and has completely taken over other combat sports such as boxing in popularity. There are plenty of hardcore UFC fans who know the ins and the outs of the sport and the fighters who compete in it. That's why there are loads of sites out there that break down UFC betting for casuals so they can know what the sport is all about and how to bet it. One of the first things you should do if you're getting into UFC betting is to research the highest paid UFC fighters of all time. So in this video, we're going to discuss the top 10 highest paid UFC fighters. But before starting the video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to never miss out on any of our videos. Number 10. Junior Dos Santos, $5,970,000. Junior Dos Santos' name inside the top 10 highest paid UFC fighters of all time, but he fought over 20 times in the UFC and earned six-figure paychecks on 6 of those occasions. Cigano was once ranked in the top 10 pound-for-pound list when he was dominating the heavyweight division and reigned supreme as champion. The Brazilian former UFC heavyweight star earned around $830,000 when he challenged Stipe Miocic for the UFC heavyweight title at UFC 211. He lost the fight, but purses like this are why Junior Dos Santos features inside the highest paid UFC fighters of all time list. Number 9. Donald Cerron, $6,155,000. Not a shock inclusion here at number 9, as Donald Cerron makes it into the top 10 best paid UFC fighters of all time list. Cerron has had over 50 fights in his professional MMA career, including numerous fights in the UFC. Cowboy has always been one of the most entertaining fighters on the UFC roster, constantly providing fans with fight of the night contenders bout after bout. Cerron features inside the top 10 is because he stepped inside the octagon to face none other than Conor McGregor at UFC 246. Despite the fact Cerron was past it and approaching his 37th birthday, he earned almost $250,000 for that fight alone. Number 8. Mark Hunt, $6,304,000. In this list is Mark Hunt. The hard-hitting New Zealander never fought for the UFC heavyweight title, but did fight the who's who of the division across his 8-year UFC career. The biggest reason as to why Hunt earned this much and is on this list is because of the fight with Brock Lesnar at UFC 200. Lesnar originally won the fight, but later tested positive for the banned substance clomiphene, which meant the fight was overturned to a no contest. After the Lesnar fight, the Super Samoan earned six-figure paychecks in each of his next 5 fights. Even though Hunt only won 1 of the 5, he earned an absolute fortune, and rightly so. Hunt was paid upwards of $800,000 following his bout with Derrick Lewis, in which was the highest purse of his career. Number 7. Jon Jones, $7,025,000. No surprise here at number 7, as arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, Jon Jones has earned over $7 million in his UFC career to date. Jones isn't done yet either, and has his sights set on the UFC heavyweight title after stepping up from light heavyweight and relinquishing his belt. Bones sat on the top of the P4P list for years and headlined a staggering 15 UFC pay-per-view events. The vast majority of these fights were title bouts or defenses, seemingly contributing a mouth-watering sum of money to his financial portfolio. Jones' highest career payday was at UFC 214 when he defeated long-standing rival Daniel Cormier for the second time. Not only did Bones prevail on the night, but he walked away with around $600,000 as well. Number 6. George St-Pierre, $7,037,000. George St-Pierre is widely regarded as one of the best UFC fighters to ever grace the octagon. The Canadian reigned supreme and defending the 170-pound title 9 times after first winning it in 2006 before losing it but regaining it in 2008. GSP then made 9 successful title defenses from 2008 to 2013, avenging the only 2 losses on his record in the process. He earned an unbelievable $2,580,000 purely for this fight, which shows how much he was worth to the UFC president. St-Pierre became only the 4th fighter in UFC history to become a multi-division world champion, with his win for the UFC middleweight title against the Englishman Bisping. Number 5. Michael Bisping, $7,135,000. Number 5 on the top 10 list of the highest paid UFC fighters of all time is former UFC middleweight champion turned UFC commentator Michael Bisping. The Count achieved the biggest purse of his career when he fought number 6 on this list, Georges St-Pierre, earning a tidy $550,000 despite losing the fight. This hefty figure was by far the biggest of Bisping's career, but the main reason he's on this list is because of how long his illustrious career was. Bisping fought in the UFC from 2006 to 2017, which included 29 fights in this 11-year period. Most notably, bar the GSP defeat, Bisping's biggest paydays were when he won the title against Luke Rockhold in 2016 in their rematch, and when he fought one of the greatest of all time in Anderson Silva in what was the fight of the night in London. Number 4. Anderson Silva, $8,112,000. Next on the list as we approach the top 3 of the highest paid UFC fighters of all time is none other than one of the greatest fighters of all time, Mr. Anderson Silva. Silva fought 25 times in the UFC across a 14-year career in the organization. Not only was Silva one of the longest-serving fighters on the UFC roster, he was arguably one of, if not the most successful of the lot. The Spider defended his UFC middleweight title 10 times and actually won the belt on only his second fight in the UFC. The Brazilian earned his first 6-figure paycheck in just his 4th UFC fight. Silva was coming near the end of his career at this point, but still earned a magnificent $820,000 for the fight that was the co-main event of the UFC 208. Number 3. Alistair Overeem, $9,569,500. Number 3, and possibly a surprise to some people as he never actually won a UFC title, is Alistair Overeem. The Dutch heavyweight announced himself to the world on his UFC debut, knocking out Brock Lesnar in the first round. After this, the only way was up for Overeem, who fought another 19 times after this in the UFC. Overeem earned over $500,000 in each of them. Overeem also topped the $800,000 mark on numerous occasions, which is why he's so high up on the list. Even in his farewell fight against Alexander Volkov, when he was knocked out in the second round, the Reem walked away having earned over $500,000 for the fight. Number 2. Khabib Nurmagomedov, $13,250,000. Number 2 on the top 10 highest paid UFC fighters of all time list is the undefeated Russian monster Khabib Nurmagomedov. This comes as no surprise as Nurmagomedov reigned supreme in the lightweight division for 3 years, which included wins over the likes of Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, and Conor McGregor. It is reported that the Eagle earned almost $5 million for his farewell fight at UFC 254, as well as huge sums of money against both Mr. Pay-Per-View, Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier. Khabib announced his retirement in March 2021, but the door is still most certainly ajar for the Eagle to make a highly anticipated return in the future that could easily push him up right to the top of this list. Number 1. Conor McGregor, $25,183,000. Number 1, and coming as no surprise, as Conor McGregor himself would say to absolutely nobody, is the notorious one, Mr. Conor McGregor. Notorious is the biggest draw to the UFC that they have ever seen, and no doubt will ever have, with McGregor earning 7-figure paydays in his last 5 UFC fights. To this day, he is the only fighter to draw this size of purse ever. McGregor, despite losing the fight, reportedly earned nearly $50 million all in for the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. McGregor is the money man, the UFC's golden boy. He's a smart man too, earning plenty of money outside of fighting, with the launch of his own whiskey in 2018, Proper 12, as well as owning numerous properties and owning a hugely successful pub in Dublin too, the Black 4 Inn. Thank you guys for watching. If you want more videos like this, make sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video.